So with that in mind, here's what we're going to do. We've chosen 3 ads that are currently being aired about Ohio's issue 1. 2 are from the no side and 1 is from the yes side. So we're going to watch them one at a time and then rate them for accuracy using a 5-point scale. Here's our scale. 1 is fact-free, 2 is mostly false, 3 is truthy, 4 is mostly true, and 5 is all facts. Once we've seen the ad, we will each rate it and then we'll explain our rating. So here's where my skills as the moderator are about to be tested. I'm gonna share my screen. We're gonna watch the first ad, and we will take our notes, and we will hold up our answers in just a second. So let me get us in here. The first ad that we're going to see, can you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So this first ad is with Governor Mike DeWine and First Lady Fran DeWine. So here we go.
Everywhere we go, voters tell us they're confused about issue 1. So Fran and I have carefully studied.
Issue 1 would allow an abortion at any time during a pregnancy, and it would deny parents the right to be involved when their daughter is making the most important decision of her life.
I know Ohioans are divided on the issue of abortion, but whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, issue 1 is just not right for Ohio.
Issue 1 just goes too far.
Everywhere we go, voters.
Okay, they heard it once. Thank you, Governor. Okay, so we've seen this first one. Maria, can you go first since this is our first hearing from you?
Sure.
So 2. Okay.
I scaled this as mostly false.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about why?
Sure. So this ad makes, in my mind, 3 claims. The first is that issue 1 would allow an abortion at any time during pregnancy, and that just isn't true. The law allows for an abortion before the time of viability, which is about 22 to 24 weeks. After that point, abortion can be restricted, but it has to be allowed to, in the case of helping save the life or health of the pregnant person. That does not, there's just not a world in which that means that somebody can get an abortion at any point in time. Besides the law, doctors also have a professional obligation to uphold medical ethics. And so it's just not the case that someone could be 9 months pregnant, decide they don't want to be pregnant anymore, go in and say, I want to have an abortion. It's just not going to happen. So the first claim to me is fact-free. It's just not true. There's a second claim that it would deny the parents the right to make decisions. And this is something that we've heard over and again, I think, in this lead up to this vote, that this amendment would stop parents from having the ability to consent to medical care. It would supersede or take away the parents' right to decide whether their children can get an elective medical procedure. And that's just not the case. And in fact, the Attorney General Yost came out and wrote a interpretation of the issue and posted it. You can look on it online. And he says in that interpretation that he specifically says the amendment does not specifically address parental consent. So parental consent is not part of this amendment. Currently, children cannot get an elective medical procedure without their parents' consent, and this amendment would not change that at all. The third thing that the ad stated was that issue 1 just goes too far. And that's an opinion. So I said mostly false because I believe that they think that it goes too far. And so that's something that you might think is true, you might think is false. I think it really hinges on whether you think that the state should be deciding, should have a role in deciding about your healthcare, or whether you think that this is something that should be decided between a person and their doctor. And that's an opinion.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Mack, what did you think?
Let's see. So I also, wrote it backwards. I also wrote a 2, however. So I agree with Dr. Gallo. my thought processes are a little bit different. I was looking more so at direct content as well as the title. So I imagine if a person sees this ad, or especially on YouTube, and sees studied the DeWines, they're going in thinking about, oh, well, this is the governor and first lady, right? And that they're going to tell us information about issue 1. They're going to clarify things. However, they do not clarify. They just acknowledge that, yes, all of the rhetoric and discourse about issue 1 is confusing. And it is confusing. And that's it. And so everything else they say in the video are basically false facts, right? And then at the end, it ends with, whether you are pro-life or pro-choice, you should still say no, which is implicitly saying you should be pro-life. And so that's why I said it was mostly false.
We got it. Okay, so 2 and a 2. Jonathan, what did you have?
Okay, well, we all agree that it's a 2. And I don't have a lot to add here. I guess I would say that the statement that issue 1 would allow abortion at any point in pregnancy as a legal matter, I think is not, that's not false, but it is misleading, because issue 1 says that the state can limit post-viability abortions, but there has to be a good health-based reason for doing so. I'm happy to defer to Dr. Gallo, who this is her field, right? But I mean, I think if you parse the language, it is conceivable that there could be a really late-term abortion. But I'm as I said, I'm happy to defer to Dr. Gallo, saying that this is highly unlikely and maybe is not going to happen at all, right? So I wouldn't count that statement as flat out false. I would say it's really deceptive. The statement about parental consent seems to me to be not accurate. We will probably have a chance to talk more about that with some of the other ads. But Dr. Gallo is right. The Attorney General has pointed out that issue 1 does not specifically address parental consent, but it is possible that if issue 1 passes, someone will challenge the parental consent law. And it is possible, although I think unlikely, that a court would say that the parental consent law is inconsistent with issue 1. But I know we're going to talk more about that later on, and I can explain why I think that's not a very likely outcome. The last statement strikes me as an opinion. And I don't know that opinions aren't true or false. They are opinions, and we're all free to agree or disagree. I think that statement is the one piece of the ad that strikes me as maybe contributing something to the overall discussion, because basically the question that issue 1 is asking the voters to decide is, how accessible should abortion be? Some people think that abortion should be rarely, if ever, allowed, maybe only in exceptional circumstances. And for those folks, issue 1 does maybe go too far, because it makes abortion more readily available than some people might be comfortable with. On the other hand, other folks think that abortion should be relatively easily obtained, and issue 1 provides for a robust abortion right. But as I said, those are opinions. I don't feel comfortable evaluating an opinion on a true false scale, because I just don't think that it fits.
Fair. Okay, so all 3 of you are 2. I also am a 2. I was on the fence actually between a 1, a fully false, fully fact-free, and 2 for being mostly false, because again, substantively, everything in this ad is false or at minimum misleading. But technically they are, in fact, Mike and Fran DeWine, so that is not a lie. Ohioans certainly are divided on the issue of abortion. And this is a confusing thing for Ohio voters. So when Governor DeWine says, you know, everywhere we go, voters tell us that they're confused about issue 1, I can certainly validate that. I have many questions every day from voters who are very confused. And it is no wonder, because the disinformation being thrown at voters is meant to confuse us. And ads like this only add to that confusion. But voters are also confused because we just had an election in August for another issue 1, which was, you know, about the processes for constitutional amendments and not about abortion. But we saw a ton of disinformation about abortion in relation to that special election too. And voters are also confused because of the ballot language. What voters see when they are going into the voting booth, what they see when they're looking at their ballot, was written by politicians to ostensibly to simplify amendment language, which is the function of the ballot board, the folks who rewrote issue 1 for voters. But in practice, it has distorted the meaning of the language of the actual amendment and the language that was actually approved by the Attorney General and that would go into the Ohio Constitution if voters pass issue 1. So yes, Governor DeWine, the voters are confused. So yeah, I give it a 2 there.
Could I just say, excuse me,
Yeah.
just make one point. If you're going to the polls, the full text of the proposed constitutional amendment will be posted at your polling place.
Yes.
So if you're not sure what it says, go read the language, the actual language that's posted at your polling place.
That's right. Yeah. And to Jonathan's point, every polling station, and that includes early vote centers for folks who are voting this weekend, is legally obligated to have a copy of the proposed language at the location. But that is something that voters need to know to ask for. We will put the language for both the ballot language and the amendment language in the chat